want to welcome you to the FreedomWorks Ohio Senate Forum. And I thank you so much for being here tonight. We're going to have first a word of prayer, and then we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and then have a couple of things to say to you. I'm going to bring up one of our colleagues. In fact, he's at the top of the food chain. One of our presidents, vice presidents, is here with us tonight, and FreedomWorks is on the ground real strong. But welcome again to the FreedomWorks Ohio Senate Forum. If you stand with me, everybody, let's give that a big round of applause. Let's give that a big round of applause. Would you stand with me? Stand with me. Let's bow our heads. Every head bowed. Our Father and our God, oh, how grateful we are to be here in the land of the free, in the home of the brave, America, our home. It is a sweet home. And we pray, dear Father, that you will allow us to do what is right in your sight to preserve our republic, not only for us, but for our posterity as well. Bless us tonight, and we hope that you're pleased with what we do. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. If you would join me in saluting Old Glory and saying our nation's pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. You may be seated. Friends, again, welcome to the FreedomWorks Ohio Senate Forum. Before I get started, I need to know who's in this building. Is there anybody here that knows America is the greatest nation on the face of the planet, the greatest success story the world has ever known? Friends, we are engaged in a great battle right now for the life of our republic. And if we fail in this effort, don't you think that America cannot go away? And one of the reasons why America is on the ropes right now is because of poor leadership. And so tonight, you have come out to hear the voices of these who want to hold office. And in order for them to hold office, how many of you know that you're going to have to hold them accountable to you? We the people. We the people. Now listen, the time is up for candidates telling us one thing on the campaign trail and then getting into office. And I hope you candidates are hearing me wherever you are. But it's time up for you saying one thing on the campaign trail and then doing another thing once you get into office. And we're sending this message to you tonight, wherever you are, that when you get to Washington or when you get to the state houses, whatever you're elected to, if you cannot do what we the people have put you in office to do, then understand we're going to ask you to get your bags, pack them, and get out of our state houses and get out of our national houses. That is the job. That is the job of the American people. And the job of these who are elected are to do what the consent, to exercise the consent of the government, of the governed. Now, before I bring up our Vice President, Noah Wall, there's one other thing I want to know before we get this show started. I travel all over this country as senior fellow of FreedomWorks, the largest grassroots organization in the nation. We boast nearly 6 million activists, over 6 million activists on the ground, just like you. Become a part of us. Go to freedomworks.org. freedomworks.org and become an activist. This is a time when we as GOPers need to understand that it's time for us to get our boots on the ground. FreedomWorks has its boots on the ground, and we'll show up when you call. One last question. I ask this all over the country, and I'm going to ask it of you. because it is very important that you're able to answer it here in the great Buckeye state of Ohio. Are there any patriots in this house tonight? Yes. Is there anybody here who will stand up for God and country, who will stand up for America, who will stand up for the Republic? Then patriots, you stand up, stand up, stand up. God bless you. God keep you. No! Who is the Vice President of FreedomWorks? Give him a big round of applause.
Thank you, CL. All right, everybody. I just want to do a really quick talk about why we're here today. So who agrees with me that the next U.S. Senator from Ohio is in the room or is in the building today? We need to do this because of a brief history lesson. So if you zoom back to election night of 2016, in Washington, D.C., I was there that night. A lot of my colleagues at FreedomWorks were in D.C. on election night when President Trump defied all odds to become president of the United States. Yes, the greatest president in modern history by far. When that happened, the city of Washington, D.C. was shocked. There was not a single person in that town who saw that coming, and newsflash, even the Republicans didn't want him to win. And because of that, they didn't have a plan to enact the agenda that every person in this room and rooms like this across the country voted for. They didn't have a plan, and then they didn't have the will to do what it is the American people wanted. And because of that, despite the fact everything that Trump did, and he did so much more than anyone else could have done in those set of circumstances by far, but Washington, D.C., the swamp, and specifically the Republicans on Capitol Hill, did everything they could to avoid enacting the agenda that he ran on. They did everything they could. And it's clear as day, can see if we don't work together, if we don't get fighters in the U.S. Senate and in the House of Representatives between now and when we beat Joe Biden in 2024, if we don't do that, if we don't get leaders in Congress, what's going to happen is the exact same thing, and they are going to ruin this country by not enacting our will, by not enacting a pro-freedom agenda, because they would rather go along to get along than have some uncomfortable votes in Washington, D.C., and we can't let that happen. So who's with us to make sure that we elect a Republican here in Ohio who's going to fight for our views, a conservative who's going to actually govern to make sure that we enact the Constitution and the vision that our founding fathers had? So who's with us on that? All right. We have an amazing lineup here. We're so thankful for everyone here. Thank you so much. And we're going to be talking to you guys before this program's over about how FreedomWorks can help all of you elect the next conservative senator from the state of Ohio, and make sure as well that we work in 2022 to enact an agenda that we can actually lead on, so that we don't lie to the American people like the members of Congress have been doing for so many years. So let's get this done. Thank you so much, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Noah. VP FreedomWorks. Go to freedomworks.org and become a part of one of the largest grassroots organizations, if not the largest in the country, 6 million strong. Our mission is to build, educate, and mobilize the largest network of grassroots activists in the country. You become a part of that movement. Right now, I'm going to bring up a local to you, and you probably all know him as Brandon Boxer. Come on up here, man. Come on up here. Brandon Boxer. There he is. Come on up, Brandon. You take it from here.
Thank you. By the way, give it up for CL. How about CL, huh? I am revved up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if we could, I'm going to sit back here. We're about to bring our candidates on stage. If we could, please make sure to shut off your phones. And I know you're a passionate group. You look great. Thank you for being here tonight. We've got a packed house. Appreciate you. If we could ask to refrain from a lot of, and I get it, you want to yell and scream, and we should, right? But for a lot of their answers that they give, if we could wait till towards the end, and we'll give an astounding round of applause, that'd be fantastic. So, in the meantime, are we ready to do this? We're ready, guys? Huh? All right, I love the energy, love the passion. All right, we're going to announce our candidates in alphabetical order before we get started, and then I'll go over the rules for the audience and, of course, the candidates, too. So here we go. Our first candidate for U.S. Senate from Ohio. Let's bring up Mr. Matt Dolan. All right, good luck. All right, up next, Mike Gibbons. All right, on stage with us next for tonight's forum, Mr. Josh Mandel. Our next candidate, former GOP chairwoman, Jane Timken. And last but not least, Mr. J.D. Vance. All right, candidates, you may have your seats. Grab your mics. Make sure that they are on. Ladies and gents, and our U.S. candidates, just want to address a few of the rules tonight. They're pretty simple. Typical debate forum. Everyone will have 90 seconds for an introductory remarks. Questions. Once I ask a question, you all get 2 minutes. If you are called out by name, you will get a 30-second rebuttal. And I want to make it clear that, candidates, we're all here to see you. We want to hear what you have to say. So it's very important that we not talk over each other. Trust me, I will make sure that you all get the chance to be heard, and especially the rebuttal if you're called out. You will also get closing remarks. That's another 90 seconds. And of course, we'll have a timer too. So as you can see, it's right there. Oh, it's already going off too. Wow. All right. Any questions, candidates? Are we ready to go? Audience, are we ready? Yeah. Love your passion. All right. Here we go. The topics. The first one we're going to do is something that's obviously been in the news the past few weeks, and that's Russia and Ukraine. Last week, Congress appropriated nearly $14 billion in humanitarian, economic, and military aid for Ukraine. They also banned Russian oil and gas exports. Now that's on top of the, $800 million. Is there a problem? Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes. First time. Sorry about that. Yes, Matt. Thank you, Matt. Matt's done this a few times. Matt, go ahead with your opening introduction. Sorry. Here, use mine.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, FreedomWorks, and good evening, everyone. What a great crowd. So I appreciate everybody coming out because Republican primaries are really difficult. We're asking you to choose amongst family and friends as Republicans. And what is important is we all understand that Republican principles carry the day. When Republican ideas are in place, our cities, our counties, our state, and our country is stronger. The issue I have is we don't always execute as Republicans. And when that happens, we get Joe Biden, we get Chuck Schumer, and we get Nancy Pelosi. And that results in inflation, in no longer energy independent, in instability and tragedy throughout the world, and open borders. And that may be the most egregious of all of them, because in 2017, we had the House, we had the Senate, we had a president who put a plan in place that was working, yet they couldn't execute and get it into law. So as a result of that, it went into executive order, and that lasted all of 1 hour. when Biden became president. That's why I'm asking you to support me, Matt Dolan, for U.S. Senate. I'm the only one in this race that can point to real conservative results, that I've executed and put Republican ideas in place. I've cut your taxes. I've reduced your regulations, reduced abortions. I have expanded school choice so parents are involved in their education. We have backed the police. I have put myself in a position of leadership, relying on my private sector and my public sector experience to be able to go to Washington and execute on Republican ideas to make sure America is indeed the strongest nation in the world. Thank you for coming out tonight, and I look forward to answering the questions for you.
I'm a businessman, I'm not a politician, and I'm a constitutional conservative without apology. I was born in the top of a double house in inner city Cleveland. We made it big, we moved to Parma, Ohio. My dad was a high school teacher and a wrestling coach, and our family was about sports. I can tell you, my dad was the best man I've ever known, and he lived his American dream, but it wasn't about financial rewards. He's still the winningest wrestling coach in Ohio history. But our family was always just one auto repair bill from being unable to make our mortgage payment. And I decided to change that. So I went to college. When I was in college, I thought I was going to end up in the concrete business. Surprisingly, I ended up in the field of investment banking. And 30 years ago, with a desk and a phone, I started a firm in Cleveland, Ohio. That firm is now one of the largest and best-known middle-market investment banks in America. I'm sorry. If you send me to the U.S. Senate, I'm going to know how to balance a budget. I'm going to know how to create jobs. But I guarantee you I would be the only U.S. Senator that can finish your driveway. I remember where I came from, and I remember how I got here. And I'm committed to winning this election because I believe Americans that love this country have to stand up and fight. And I do not believe that we can entrust the future of our nation to career politicians, party insiders, or people that put their finger in the air to find out what they're going to say next. I thank you for having me here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for putting this on FreedomWorks, and thank you all for being here. My name is Josh Mandel, and I believe there's a fork in the roads today. In Washington, the Democrats are liars, and the Republicans are cowards. My friends up here on stage, for the next hour, they're going to tell you about the fight we have in front of us against the radical left and Biden and Schumer and Pelosi, and indeed, it's an important fight. But I would submit to you, ladies and gents, the more important fight is a fight for the soul of the Republican Party, a fight for the soul of the conservative movement. Here's the fork in the roads. Down one fork, down one path, goes these squishy rhino Republicans, many of whom have been pro-China over the years. People like Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, Mitt Romney, who made all this money taking American companies and selling them to China, and people like Mike Gibbons, who had all these companies here in America and then made money selling them to China. That is not the path we should be taking in this country. Here's the other path. The other path is electing fighters. Fighters like Jim Jordan, Ted Cruz, and Donald Trump. Ladies and gents, that is the path I'm taking. And I want you to think about this. One of us is going to be elected to the United States Senate. And when we get there, the party bosses are going to pull us in that room, and they're going to say, listen, I need you to vote for this one thing. It might not be in line with your principles. It might not be in line with what's good for your state or country, but I need you to be a team player.
All right, thank you, Josh.
There's only one person on this stage who will tell those Republican Party bosses to pound salt, and it's me, Josh Mandel. Thank you. Hey, guys, guys, before we could, Jane, if you don't mind, Jane, thank you for just a sec, because Mr. Gibbons was called out, I have to let him respond to that real quick. So, Mr. Gibbons, go ahead. Everyone's coming out swinging tonight.
Josh said Democrats lie. Well, Josh just lied to you. My company's been in existence for 32 years. We've sold one company to a Chinese company in Michigan, and the jobs in that region doubled. It's the only involvement we ever had in China. I've sat across the table from Chinese investors, Chinese businessmen. I don't trust them. They're unethical. They don't follow the same rules we follow, and they're all members of the Communist Party. And I will tell you, for years, I've insisted, and any time that anybody will listen.
All right, Mr. Gibbons, my apologies.
I was called a liar. Do I have a chance to respond real quick?
Guys, can we just get through our introduction statements? And I promise, you'll get the chance, Mr. Mandel, you will. Let's just get through the introductory first. Jane, my apologies, please, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Jane Timken. I'm running to be your next United States Senator to fight for the America First agenda. As most parents know, when something threatens your children, you fight. And I'm a mom on a mission, ready to take our country back, to fight for our border security, American jobs, and putting parents' rights in education so our children's future is secure. You have a choice to make in this race. Who do you trust to fight for the America First agenda? Well, as you've seen, we've got a lot of show horses in this race, but I'm a workhorse. If you want someone who leads with grit and grace and gets things done, then I'm your candidate, because I've done it. In 2016, President Trump asked me to take over the Ohio Republican Party because John Kasich had driven it into a ditch. I took on the establishment, and I won. I turned the party around, unified Republicans, and President Trump won big. I'm not just all talk, and I didn't reinvent myself for this campaign. I've been in the trenches fighting for the America First agenda because it's what I believe in. It's what was working for Ohio. We had a booming economy. We had a secure border. We had energy independence. And I don't know about you, but I've been disgusted as I've watched what Joe Biden and the Democrats have done to weaken America. No more. We need people to fight back. And Joe Biden has led to increased inflation, gas prices rising, our border is burning, and our enemies like Iran, Russia, and China are taking advantage of Biden's weakness. We need leaders who are going to fight back, fight for American jobs, border security, and parents' power in education, not the government. Thank you.
All right, J.D. Vance.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks to FreedomWorks for doing this. Thanks to the other candidates for participating. And most of all, thanks to all of you for being here and caring enough about this country to actually listen to what we have to say tonight. You know, I have a spiel. I do town halls all over the state, and we always give this, we try to say something similar, which is basically, look, we've got a terrible border crisis. We've got a terrible energy crisis. We need to close the border and open up the pipelines so that we can get our country back to work. We can tamp down on this inflation, and we can stop the deadly drugs coming into our communities. But I saw something coming up here that made me throw that away because I'm so frustrated with the fact that in this country you're not even allowed to speak basic reality or basic truth. And so here's a basic truth. Men are men and women are women, and they're different, ladies and gentlemen. I saw that there was a biological male who won a swimming competition for college females in this country, and it made me realize we are living in a fake news media environment with a fake set of leaders who have fake talking points to talk about fake problems. And that's why I'm running for Senate. On every issue we're running on, we need real people with real solutions who aren't afraid to talk about the things that really matter. Now, of course, we've got to have compassion for kids who are struggling with all manner of issues. The Democrats will call me uncompassionate. They'll say I'm a hateful person for giving this talk tonight. But at the end of the day, we need to have compassion for our young girls. We need to have compassion for those who are defending women's sports. My wife gave birth to a 10-week-old girl.
Did you just give birth?
She gave birth to a baby girl 10 weeks ago. it's not fair to her, it's not fair to any girl to be forced to compete against biological males. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get biological males out of girls' sports.
Thank you, J.D. Vance. I don't know about you guys, but I'm all revved up for this first question, huh? What do you say? All right, ladies and gentlemen, candidates, this is how this is going to work. We'll ask a question. We're going to start with Mr. Dolan first. By the way, candidates, is it okay to address you by your first name? I just want to make sure that's okay. So we'll go with Matt first. We'll go down the line, and then the next set of questions, or first question, next question, we'll start with JD. Come back this way, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. All right, so our first one is about Russia and China. And Matt, we're going to go with you first. Last week, Congress appropriated nearly $14 billion in humanitarian, economic, and military aid for Ukraine. Of course, we also know that they banned Russian oil and gas exports. How would you have voted on these two bills if you had been in Congress as a senator? Part two on that, as the fighting continues, what role should the U.S. government be playing in the Russia-Ukraine war?
Okay, thank you. Let me deal with the first question first. No, I would not. The Ukraine support is very important, but we've got to recognize you cannot just put in the dark of night all these spending provisions into a bill, plop it on people's desks and say, you got 12 hours to vote for this. So we've got to get back to regular order. We've got to get back to transparency. And I'm going to fight to make sure that we have a budget. I've done 3 balanced budgets in the state of Ohio, and you know how your taxpayer dollars are being spent. We've got to do that in Washington so that we can have an honest debate about Ukrainian support, because they do need our support. They need humanitarian aid and they need military aid. Now let's make this clear. This is Putin's war. This is Putin's war. But some of the factors that he had to consider were caused by Joe Biden's weakness and decision making. Weakness in Afghanistan. Decision making to tell American, nope, we're going to cut your jobs, we're going to cut your oil, and I'm going to go to Iran, I'm going to go to Venezuela, I'm going to go to OPEC to get to oil. It makes us weak. It made Russia feel strong. We've got to stay strong for the Ukrainian people. We've got to give them humanitarian aid. But I also think this, we ought to be showing a little strength in the Pacific. And so it's not lost on communist China. America is not distracted. We are the leader of the world. We are present everywhere.
Thank you, Matt. And we will be touching on China, too. All right, Mike?
Same question?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I can read it. Do you want me to read it again? You got it? Okay.
Why don't you read it one more
Yeah,
time?
sure, no problem. With Congress appropriating $14 billion in humanitarian aid, basically we're asking how would you have voted on those two bills if you had been in Congress already? And what role should the U.S. be playing in this war?
Well, this is personal to me. I have a son that's a Navy pilot, so I don't want to see him flying around Poland or the Ukraine. I would have voted for it. I think the last thing Matt mentioned was very important. China needs to see us stand up. It's going to be a real problem if the Ukraine gets wiped out here, because Taiwan's going to feel empowered and go in, or I'm sorry, China's going to feel empowered and go in and do the same thing in Taiwan. And with the president we have right now, that's probably a pretty good bet they could carry it off. As far as banning Russian oil, I don't think it's going to do a lot of things, because the problem with why we're ordering 400 million barrels of oil every month from Russia is because we have fallen in oil production in the United States by 400 million barrels. Exactly, almost. This was set up when Biden came into office, and he canceled the Keystone Pipeline, and he took away our energy independence. Without energy independence, Putin would not be where he is. There's only one market out there for oil. It's worldwide. And the oil is priced largely by supply and demand. Yeah, it floats around a lot in the markets. But when that oil was taken away from government production, from U.S. production, the price went up. It was going up before Putin came in. I support supporting the Ukrainian army. I think we need to help with humanitarian principles there, or situations over there. This country is being devastated. We cannot, as good human beings sit there and let this happen. And I think we need to get Europe, and I think they're doing it. I think if we had a stronger president, they'd be doing more. But there were 190,000 troops sitting on that border since last August. They weren't going to summer camp. And we should have been doing it by then. We should have been doing it at that point.
All right, thank you, Mike. Josh?
I've come out in support of sending Avengers and Patriots and all different types of defense systems to Ukraine. I agree with Matt that I don't think the bill that passed was the right bill to do it in. It turned into like a Christmas tree bill where they were hanging on all this other stuff, and so I would have voted against that specific legislation. But I think when we talk about Russia, you can't decouple it from China. In fact, on February 4th, Putin flew to Beijing. Putin and Xi from the Chinese Communist Party had a meeting. And in that meeting, they decided on all of this. The invasion of Ukraine, and that Xi was going to watch very carefully the response from Biden and the rest of the world. And in fact, that day, February 4th in Beijing, Putin and Xi, the leader of the Chinese Communist Party, put out a joint statement. And that joint statement to the world said, we, the Chinese Communist Party, we, the Russian Federation, are focused on, quote, a redistribution of power in the world. Translation, the downfall of America and the rise of the Chinese Communist Party. Yep. And listen, I think it's important to talk facts and dates and companies and who has the moral ability to talk about this. I'm a Marine. I did a couple tours in Iraq, first in 2004, then again in 2007 and 2008. In between, I did funerals for Marines here in Ohio who got killed overseas. Around this same time, my opponent, Mr. Gibbons, was making billions of dollars by shipping Ohio businesses to China. He just got up here and said he wasn't doing that. Let me give you 3 examples. Perfect Fit LLC had thousands of jobs all over Ohio. He took Perfect Fit LLC, and Mike, why don't you explain to everyone why you sold it to a company called Shanghai Shenda? That was in 2015 while President Trump was campaigning against China. And then he did the same exact thing, owning stock in Chinese petro.
All right, Mike, would you like to rebuttal that?
Frankly, I'm not sure where he got Perfect Fit from, because I'm unaware of the deal. And I'm not sure what Chinese petro has to do with anything. Are you saying I owned it?
Yeah, you own stock in it.
Well,
That's where you filed that with the Federal Elections Commission. You own stock in Chinese petro.
I personally didn't buy the stock.
You made millions off it, sir.
I don't think I made millions off of anything. I'd love to have made millions off of Chinese petro. First of all,
Shanghai Shenda and Chinese petro.
Buying a second, you may not understand this because you've never been in the private. No, you don't.
I do.
You've never been in the private sector in your
entire life. All right,
I've worked, sir.
Josh,
squat.
About 2 tours in Iraq. Don't tell me I haven't worked. Don't tell me I haven't worked.
You don't know squat.
It's okay, all right?
You don't know squat.
2 tours in Iraq. Don't tell me I haven't worked.
Back off, buddy. You're gonna
You back off.
Come on.
Never that'll happen.
Sit down.
Never.
Watch.
Yeah.
Watch.
We'll square it away with the
Dealing with
rules.
the wrong dude.
No, you're dealing with the wrong guy. You watch what happens. You watch what happens.
Sit down. Come on.
All right, guys.
Josh doesn't understand this because he never spent a day in the private sector.
Yeah,
But when you buy a secondary stock, when you buy a secondary stock, you aren't giving any money to the company. It's a market thing. And by the way, I didn't even know I owned Chinese petro, and if I did, it was being managed by U.S. Bank. Because I frankly was working in the private sector, and I don't have time to watch a stock portfolio. I'm too busy working.
all right, thank you, Mike. Thank you. Well, now I understand why FreedomWorks told me to go to the gym today. I get it now. All right. Anyway, Jane, please go ahead.
Okay, well, now for a woman's and a mother's perspective on Ukraine.
Thank you.
Look, as a mom, my heart goes out to the Ukrainians. And to watch those videos of maternity hospitals being bombed and babies and children being harmed, it is devastating to watch. But the question was, would I have voted for that funding bill? And as it was said, it's a almost 3,000-page bill that had Ukrainian funding put in. It should be a separate bill. We need to stand up and fight back to separate these bills out. This is what's wrong with our Congress. They are not doing the right thing by the American people. However, I would support sending military equipment to the Ukrainians. They have asked for military equipment, and we should provide it. The problem is Biden's basement diplomacy has led to Putin's aggression. Vladimir Zelensky was asking for help long ago, sanctions and military equipment, and Biden didn't do it. We should have put those sanctions on before Putin invaded Ukraine. Now, as a mom, let me make it very clear. I do not want American troops on the ground, not at all. But we should be standing up strong because it is a signal to the world, to Xi Jinping and the rest of the world, the Iranian Republican Guard, that America is weak, and it invites weakness into our country. We need to hold Putin accountable, and we need to stand up strong. I've been in the trenches fighting for President Trump and the America First policies that put America first, that was peace through strength, that strengthened our military, and we were standing strong in the world. Joe Biden has created weakness, and we need strong leaders that have the mom heart to lead in the U.S. Senate.
Thank you, Jane. JD?
Yeah, so before I answer that question, I just got to comment on what we just saw. Look, as the only other person who served his country in uniform, I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. My mamaw had 6 grandchildren, 3 of them enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. I think the way you use the U.S. Marine Corps, Josh, is disgraceful. It's not a political football for you to toss around. I mean, think about what we just saw. This guy wants to be a U.S. Senator, and he's up here, hold me back, I got 2 tours in the Marine Corps. What a joke. Answer the question, stop playing around. Now let's see, Russia and Ukraine. All right, look, the problem with Russia and Ukraine is, look, it's a tragic situation. What happened over there is very sad, but ladies and gentlemen, it cannot be said enough. We have got our own problems. We have a wide open southern border. We have a terrible inflation crisis, and the only thing that will salvage Joe Biden's presidency is if a bunch of stupid and weak-willed Republicans let this guy bumble us into a war that we have no business fighting. That is the risk in this moment. I think it's shameful. It is disgraceful. Think about this. We all lived through Trump's presidency. The congressional Republicans could not give this guy $5 billion for a border wall, and it took them a week to give $14 billion to Ukrainian aid. What about our own country, and what about our own problems? You can believe that. You can believe that without being heartless, but ladies and gentlemen, the job of a U.S. Senator is to be a statesman or a stateswoman. It's to make the hard decisions and not let emotion bumble us into a conflict. Think about everything they've screwed up. The Iraq War, the Afghanistan War, Syria, and Libya. We got to stop giving these clowns so much power and focus right here at home.
All right. JD, grab some water because you're up next with the next question, okay? And here is the next question. You guys have brought it up a little bit already, but it's about China. We saw 2 things happen this week with China. Russia asked China for aid earlier this week. Then there's a video call today with President Biden and President Xi Jinping. Shocker, it looks at this point like China could not assure that they would not help Russia at this point. So my question is, with this war in mind with Russia and Ukraine, what should the Biden administration and Congress do if China invades Taiwan? Second part of that is, what role should the U.S. government be playing in a potential conflict between China and Taiwan?
Yeah, look, so Taiwan's such a different situation from Russia and Ukraine because China is our most important enemy, and Taiwan makes things that if we don't have in this country, we're talking about something that would make the Great Depression look like a joke. If Taiwan's economy was controlled by the Chinese, we wouldn't have computer chips, we wouldn't have home appliances. The entire industry, so many of the industries that we rely on would get totally sunk if the Chinese took over Taiwan. So I think what we've got to do is, first of all, send a message of strength to the Chinese, to the Taiwanese, that this is different. This is in our vital national security interest, and we're not going to let these guys roll over Taiwan. Because the thing the Chinese aren't good at least not yet, is naval power. They're not yet powerful. They don't trust themselves to go across the South China Sea and invade Taiwan, at least not yet. The second thing that we've got to do is invest in our military technology. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason those idiotic policies for 30 years that made it harder for us to make stuff in this country, the chickens are coming home to roost. Because when you don't make enough stuff in your country, you start to fall behind in technology development. That's how we stay ahead of the Chinese, is investing in our military technology right here at home. And absolutely, look, if the Chinese do invade the Taiwanese, we're going to have to send them weapons, and we're going to have to make a lot of hard decisions about how to support these guys. Are we going to send boots on the ground to Taiwan? No, that doesn't make any sense, but we've got to prevent the invasion from happening in the first place. Because again, if it happens, we are talking about the end of the American economy as we know it.
Thank you, JD. Jane?
China is our greatest strategic threat economically and a national security threat. That is why I was in the trenches fighting with President Trump. He understood that. He stood up to China. He took China head on. Those sanctions on China held China accountable. It was about American jobs. And I got to tell you, China has been dumping materials into our United States. They've been stealing our intellectual property. And no one in Congress right now is holding China accountable for COVID-19. One of the first things I want to do as the senator is hold hearings to hold China accountable for the origins of this pandemic they unleashed on the world. And the question is about Taiwan. Peace through strength. We need to invest in our military today. The Biden basement diplomacy has invited this weakness, and there's a reason why Xi Jinping is making an alliance with Putin, because they want to destroy America. We need leaders who are going to stand up strong, who understand peace through strength, who understand that we need to make sure our military is strong and that we will defend Taiwan. They are critical to this country, but it is more critical that this country stands as the greatest country in the face of this earth, and I will continue to fight for this country because I've been in the trenches fighting for the America First agenda, and I'm the only one on the stage who's done it.
All right, Josh?
I agree that peace through strength, the Reagan doctrine of Shining City on the Hill, the Trump doctrine of America First, strong American military, and strong commander-in-chief works. Applicable to China and Taiwan, but if we just look at past being prologue, when Obama was commander-in-chief, weak commander-in-chief, weak president, Putin invades Ukraine, takes Crimea. Same thing now, weak commander-in-chief, weak president in Biden, Putin goes into Ukraine. In between, you had President Trump, strong commander-in-chief, strong America, strong military. Putin was frozen on his hands. That same principle applies to Taiwan and China. Make no mistake about it, last summer at the convention of the Chinese Communist Party, Xi said, and I quote, "Anyone that tries to subjugate or oppress the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese people will find itself on a collision course with a great wall of steel," unquote. That is how Xi, that is how the Chinese Communist Party thinks. And so the best antidote to that is a strong military. Remove wokeness, critical race theory, transgender craziness from the military. Biden put wokeness over war fighting. On top of that, we should be investing in modern day technology for air superiority, space superiority. That's why President Trump created Space Force, and also naval superiority as well. Unfortunately, here in Ohio, Mr. Gibbons took a company called Lordstown Motors. The stock rode from 30 where he sold it down to 2, made millions of dollars, and then sold it to Taiwan and the Chinese. We can't have someone like this fighting the Chinese.
All right. Are we gonna give him 30? Okay. All right. We'll give him 230. All right, to rebuttal that. Why don't you rebuttal what Josh had to say first, Mike? And
Sure.
Go ahead.
Again, Josh is showing his ignorance. Josh, do you know anything about economics or finance at all? At all? Yes, I was a financial advisor to Lordstown. Yes, I was there when we acquired the plant. But I can tell you this. We were no longer the financial advisor when they went public. In fact, I would not have suggested going public because I don't think they were ready. However, COVID came, and it presented an opportunity that never existed before. I was not involved in that transaction at all. And by the way, it is a Taiwanese company that bought them, who is bringing an awful lot of assets here to America. And what I care about are jobs in Ohio. And you can sell whatever company you want to any country in the world, but when you sell a company, Josh, and you don't know anything about this either, they don't move the company to that country. They come and invest in it, and more jobs are created. And that's why I did the Lordstown deal, is it wasn't a great deal to start with. And we spent long, hard hours getting it to where it is. And I believe in the long run, it'll be successful. The stock market doesn't tell you what's going on in the inside. And I believe in the product. The people that I were working for originally are no longer there. But they have a first-class management operation, and they're going to end up with a production facility in Lordstown, Ohio, that's going to employ 3,000 people. That's what I care about. And they will produce a truck that hopefully you'll all buy. Now, what's the question? The other question?
The other is just how we would handle a potential conflict between China and Taiwan.
Right. Well, I can tell you, China's not in as great a shape as everybody thinks they are. They have debt 3.5 times their GNP. Xi is working right now, looking right now at the Ukraine, seeing how much it's going to cost Putin to conquer it. And he's doing his calculations. And I will tell you that if we can help Ukraine hold off the Russians, it could forestall any type of an invasion of Taiwan. We got to do that. Donald Trump did have it right. He was the first person that ever took. I get more time, don't I?
Let's stop right there. Okay. Thank. Good. Is it quick? Is it quick? Give it, Mike. Is it quick?
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, Donald Trump had it right. The way to get our jobs back from China, the way to get them back, is lower taxes and lower regulation. That's why companies were returning here. We just listened to Joe Biden in his State of the Union say he wanted to manufacture in America, but by the way, we're going to tax everybody to death.
All right, thanks, Mike. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, Matt, go ahead.
So I served in the state senate in Cuyahoga County, and I've sat down in my service with Ukrainian people. And there are tens of thousands of Ukrainian people in Ohio. And I've prayed with them, and I've rallied with them over this. And America can do two things. And they are the line of defense from the Soviet or from the Russians going into NATO countries. We don't turn our backs on people who are willing to go out in the streets and fight. America is strong, and we can do two things at once. And that's why you send someone like me who has the experience necessary to get things done in Washington. And don't leave our allies hanging. Now, how you campaign is how you're going to serve. And my first ad in this is welcome to the party, folks, because I said we are at a Cold War, and it's with China. And we have got to get our jobs back. As I said earlier, we've got to show strength in the Pacific. We got to make sure you can't compete with communist China. The tariffs, all of that is a tax on you. You got to hit them where it hurts. We got to create economic allies with Indonesia, with the Philippines, with India, with our Central American partners. The longer we serve and get trade with them, the weaker China becomes. And we also have to recognize that I've taken on China as a state senator. In fact, all of us in the state senate did, because we worked on a piece of legislation that told Intel, you can come to Ohio and make chips. We're no longer going to rely on China for their rare earth materials. We're no longer going to rely on China to power your phones. We're going to do it right here in Ohio, much less America. So if you have the ability and the skill set to go to Washington to handle multiple problems at one time, have the principles that you're going to lead with, that you campaign with, that you've done. That's what I'm going to accomplish in Washington. We are going to be strong because we're going to get things done.
All right, thank you, Matt. Candidates, quickly, I want to apologize to you. I have to change up one rule real quick because we have so many other questions and topics to get to. And of course, these people, we're all here to see you and hear what you have to say. If someone now calls you out, you're going to have to do it within your 2-minute answer, okay? I apologize, but we've got so much more to get to this morning. I know I had to be the bad guy, but we've got much, much more to get to. Our next is big tech. So Americans, particularly conservatives, are concerned with the growth of big tech companies, with censorship. We saw this with former President Trump. Understanding these concerns, if you are elected as a senator, what avenues would you pursue to address these concerns? Matt, we'll start with you.
Well, obviously, big tech encompasses a whole lot of issues right now. And first of all, we never should have any quasi-government, any private business ever shutting down anyone's First Amendment right in this country. And I'll tell you what, I don't delete any of my tweets. And when you learn from me is I'm transparent and honest, and I call it as I see it. And when Donald Trump, for the first time, got shut down by Twitter, go look it up. There was one voice on this stage who called out that and says, if you can shut down the President of the United States, what does that do to us as individuals? So obviously they're creating a political movement. And we have a responsibility to enjoy the benefits of big tech, but make sure if they're going to act in a quasi-government manner and control our thoughts, then the protections that former Congress has given them are going to go away. The idea that they can monopolize one sector of communications is going to go away. You don't shut down big tech by putting more government regulation on them. You shut down big tech by opening up the ability for all of us to have access to the internet, to any private company who wants to provide for communications. And look what our former president is doing. He's doing that. He's using the marketplace to go after and hit them where it hurts, and that is the idea. You, as individuals in the marketplace, can say, no longer am I going to enjoy that platform. I'm going to a platform where I can speak my mind, speak freely. And in the U.S. Senate, that's what I would focus on, to make sure that your voice is never shut down by any private corporation in America.
Thank you, Matt. Mike?
We live in a country with a free market. The reason Facebook is so powerful is because we all use them. What we need to do is vote with our feet. And that is the first thing you should do, is go home and close your Facebook account and tell your friends that, because that is how you get these people. But I will tell you this, where the government is conspiring with Facebook to cancel people and to hold back information, it is a clear breach of the First Amendment, and somebody is going to have to sue. If possible, I'd like to do that. It would be a great case because they are clear and simple. It's a First Amendment violation. So you may be wondering why every time Josh gets up, he's focused on me. For the first time in this campaign, Josh is no longer in the lead. And the standard political technique for regaining the lead is by attacking the leader. That's right. But Josh, there's a reason why you're no longer in the lead, and we just saw some of it here tonight. People are tired of people that don't know anything other than how to get elected. Yes. And I will grant him all the political knowledge in the world. He knows far more than I do about that. But they're tired of sending those people to Washington and having them sit there and listen to their Senate staffers tell them what they should vote on. I don't have to do that. So I think as long as I'm going to hold a lead, this is what the debates are going to look like, so get used to it. I don't think you can regulate these guys out of business. I think you need to walk And that's what that's my solution to the problem with Facebook and everybody else. Walk. Just like the members of the school board. We have CRT in the schools because we
Thank
don't
you,
pay
Mike.
attention
We
to
will
school
be getting to
board elections.
CRT in just a little bit. Josh, go ahead.
All right, thank you. I posted online, that's probably a month or two ago, that we should put veterans over illegals. Let me read this to you real quick. That's what I thought. I thought it was common sense, too. So I posted vets over illegals, and I wrote specifically, illegal immigrants should be deported, not supported with American tax dollars. There are thousands of veterans living under bridges, and they must be our priority. Facebook responded by saying, this is hate speech. You violated our community standards. Think about that for a second. By saying that we should put veterans over illegals, it's hate speech. It's not hate speech, it's fact. There's a guy I served with in the Marine Corps who works at Facebook, and I sent him a text. I said, I'll read you what I sent to him. I said, Facebook is suspending me and saying it's hate speech to put American military veterans ahead of illegals. He said, let me check and see. I got a little impatient, so then I said, these ungrateful punks have no appreciation that their freedom is a direct product of young Marines and soldiers and sailors and airmen standing watch. The reality is there's all these 23-year-olds sitting at companies like Facebook and Twitter and Google, and they've been trained on these woke university campuses. And they hate all of you. They hate me.
Josh, you have 20 seconds. Forgive me, but how would you curb censorship?
First of all, we need to eliminate Section 230. They should have no exemption from liability. And second, we should have an all-out frontal assault with lawsuits, protests, and anything we can aimed at them.
Thank you, Josh. Jane?
Big tech is the weapon of the cancel culture and the woke left. And we all know it. Look, I've spent time with college kids who are afraid to make posts on their Facebook page because they will get canceled by their friends. We've seen what happened in the 2020 election when the Hunter Biden story was posted by the New York Post on Twitter. It was canceled and taken down. President Trump was canceled and taken down. This is the vehicle they're using to silence you and me, and it's got to stop. Look, folks, we need people who are going to stand up and fight, but we also need people who don't spend their days as Twitter warriors trying to get canceled every day. I'm going to Washington, D.C. with grit and grace to get things done. And what I will do will hold these big tech companies accountable, especially when our government is in cahoots with big tech. When Jen Psaki stands up as press secretary and says, I've flagged posts and sent them to the technology companies, spreading disinformation to take them down, that is government silencing, and that is unconstitutional and a violation of our First Amendment rights. I am in this race for our freedoms and liberties, and our First Amendment freedom of speech is at stake. It is our God-given constitutional right. It is your right, and what I will fight for is your right to speak your mind. It is the basis of our country, and I'm going to fight with the grit and grace to get it done.
Thank you, Jane. JD.
Yeah, look, I notice everybody here says they're going to hold big tech accountable, but they didn't actually offer any ideas for how they're going to hold big tech accountable. We need specifics, ladies and gentlemen. We need actual answers to this. So first of all, we have got to get away from this establishment Republican mindset that's saying the market is going to solve the fact that these 5 companies control what we're allowed to say and how we're allowed to say it. I mean, I encourage you, Google on your phone when you get home tonight, can a man become pregnant? And the first answer that Google will give you is yes, men can become pregnant. In fact, it happens a lot more often than you might think. These people are controlling not just our politics, but our entire culture, ladies and gentlemen, and we need more than slogans. I actually know the tech industry. I was the first outside investor in a company called Rumble, which you guys have probably used because it's where a lot of people, including the president, when they got canceled, have used Rumble services. There are 3 things that we have to do to break their stranglehold on our country. Number 1, we got to break them up. They're too big, they're too powerful. We need to use antitrust laws to break them up. Number 2, the whole business model of big tech is built around something. They steal your data, they spy on you using these cell phones, and then they sell it back to you in the form of advertising. That should be illegal. If they're going to steal our data, they got to pay for it, and they got to tell us what they're stealing. That simple. And then the third thing is we've got to end the special protections. We've got to make it so that the big tech companies play by the same rules as every other business in this country. You do those 3 things, they'll break the stranglehold. We got to be honest about what's going on here, okay? When Jen Psaki is telling Facebook to censor conservatives and Facebook listens, we're not living in a free market. We're living in a government-controlled monopoly that's destroying the First Amendment. We need real solutions for fixing it, not stupid slogans.
Thank you, JD. JD, if you want, grab some water because you're going to be on the next one. We're going to piggyback this. Ladies and gentlemen.
The cycle's killing me, man.
Sorry. Matt, too. Matt has to do the same thing. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've ever read Section 230, it's pretty scary to see just how much power big tech has and how much immunity they have. JD, we'll start with you. Some of you touched on this already. Republicans obviously want to reform Section 230. Hard to believe that it's been around since the 90s to address censorship. Concerns with big tech. What reforms, if any, would you pursue with Section 230?
Yeah, pretty simple, and obviously I just touched on this, so I don't even think I need to take my whole 2 minutes, okay? The problem with Section 230 is it gives these technology companies privileges that none of you enjoy, okay? No business, no small business or big business in our community enjoys the same protections. Basically makes it impossible to sue them. When they censor conservatives, when they do things that actually cause people harm, it's nearly impossible to sue these companies. So we got to reform the law. Now, how do we reform it? There are a couple things we need to do. The first, and pretty simple, is that we just need to repeal Section 230 for any company of over a certain size. Absolutely. Now, the reason I say of a certain size is because the big tech companies have an army of lawyers, okay? An army of lawyers, and they're going to go after every small company. They're going to use that army of lawyers, that army of regulators, and they're going to destroy the new entrants. So President Trump's new Truth Social or Getter or any of the alternative platforms that we're using, we need to reform it in a way that protects them to protect new entries into this market while destroying the stranglehold and the power of big tech. That's what we got to do.
Thanks, JD. Jane?
I agree that we need to repeal Section 230. The history of it was then when these internet companies all started, it was supposed to be this free market flow of ideas. But now we know that they are censoring people. And as I said, they are the weapon of the woke culture. But look, I think it's wrong to pick winners and losers in the marketplace to protect certain companies and others. These companies should be held accountable. If they're going to be acting like publishers, should be treated like publishers, and they should be held liable. The other things we need to do is break up these big, large monopolies. There is no reason that Facebook, or Meta, as it's called, should be as powerful as it is and also meddling in our elections. These tech companies have gotten out of control and they are almost their own governmental entities. We need to regulate them. I know I'm a Republican, but they need to be broken up and we need laws to make sure that we have a free and fair exchange of ideas. It's about protecting our First Amendment constitutional rights.
Thank you, Jane. Josh?
I'd agree that for companies above a certain size, we should whole hog eliminate Section 230. I also agree that we need to be more aggressive in going after these companies. Some of you might have seen up in Wisconsin, there's a special investigation in Wisconsin into Mark Zuckerberg and the Facebook money, the Zuckerbucks, the $400 million that was spread around America in violation of our equal protection because they took his money, spread it around to government entities at the county level, and they specifically targeted voter registration, get out the vote in Democrat areas. Think about that for a second. In Wisconsin, it tripped bribery laws. In Wisconsin, they have a special investigation into Zuckerberg and Facebook and his organization because of this. And we need prosecutors around this country to be investigating that as well. What we also need is transparency into the investments of United States congressmen and United States senators. So many of these congressmen and senators are so conflicted. I'm supportive of this legislation now to prohibit congressmen and senators from trading stocks when they're in Congress. And on the stage, there's 5 people who've had the courage to run for U.S. Senate. There's only one who currently is profiting in stock in a Chinese tech company. And so I'm gonna yield the rest of my time and all Mr. Gibbons' time to explain why he personally today, not yesterday, not 10 years ago, today is personally invested in Momo, a Chinese tech company.
All right. Mike.
I'll tell you why I invested in Momo. My personal trainer told me to buy it. And I know this is difficult for you to understand, but no money goes to Momo when I buy Momo. It's a stock trade. That's it. I know that's difficult. Now, do I get to answer the other question?
Yes, please, go ahead. What reforms?
It hasn't worked out, by the way.
Mike, Section 230.
Repeal Section 230. The problem is existing legislation has never been devised for this situation. I don't think anybody 25 or 30 or 50 years ago ever conceived of the idea that we would have these tech companies with this kind of power. We need to completely develop a set of legislation that will control these companies. And frankly, I think we ought to forbid them from expanding. I mean, the antitrust laws are there to protect consumers. They are too powerful. The Clayton Antitrust Act, the Sherman Antitrust Act don't apply here. And we need all new legislation, period. But again, the way to get rid of these people is the same way, when the left boycotts some product, all of a sudden the company's doing whatever they want. I think we need to boycott these big tech companies. Go to Rumble. Don't use Facebook. I mean, it's out of control. And that is the most effective way of doing it. This country is a conservative country, yet everybody's on Facebook. Why is that? It's in our ability and in our hands to put these people in the place they should be in. And once we start leaving them, they will adjust their behavior. It's that simple. That's what a free market's all about.
Thank you. There's something wrong with the clock earlier, so it looks like you have 30 seconds left, but you don't. So thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. I said, no, I'm just trying to be honest here. No, Mr. Gibbons, I didn't cheat you, I promise. Matt, go ahead.
So a lot has been said, and I said in my remarks, 230 needs to be modified. There's more to it than just what we're talking about. But if you're going to act as a publisher, if you're going to act like quasi-government, you don't enjoy any immunity. It should be, that part of it should be modified. Now, let's talk about something that was said on the stage. What has happened to our Republican Party? That the idea that the marketplace, that capitalism is somehow a sign of those establishment Republicans. What has happened? The basis of our economy, the basis of what makes our country exceptional is that we base our financial decisions as individuals, as companies, on the marketplace. Yes. It is designed to make us innovative. It is designed to bring people from all over the world, no matter who you are, no matter what education you have. My uncle didn't graduate from college, yet he started a company, and he did very well. Why? Because he knew about marketplace, because he knew about capitalism. The greatest country on earth is because of how we run our economics, and now in 2022, somehow that is a sin, and you are labeled because you agree in the marketplace and capitalism? Come on. This idea of globalization's got to go. We are a strong country. We are run on strong principles. We started with an idea, and that idea is that we are going to be self-governed, and that idea was that you, as an individual, no matter who you are, can do as much as you can do on your own. And the government's not going to get in your way. That's what our country's based on. That's what Republicans are based on, and we got to get back to that.
Thanks, Matt. Grab some water. You'll be up next with the next question. Quickly, because I want to get to immigration too. But first, about CRT. Ladies and gentlemen, all of us know that if there's anything was a silver lining to the pandemic, we got to see really firsthand of what our children were learning in school. Some okay, but some obviously pretty bad, pretty rotten. CRT, for example. This craziness and spread of CRT in some schools has spread controversy around the country, turning our classrooms into war rooms. So, Matt, we'll start with you. How to ensure schools in Ohio, when you're a U.S. Senator, stop teaching this and face repercussions, what they do?
Okay, well, the question's an important one, but the question's the wrong one. So, look, CRT is wrong. We should not have it in our schools, for sure. You guys did a lot of great work this fall in making sure that the voice of the people, the voice of the parents got into school boards. But whatever you label it, you know, the state legislature is going to deal with it. And there's a larger picture at stake here. And the question just revealed that. Look, I want to be your next U.S. Senator. And I want to be a constitutional conservative. And I'm not sure my opponents even know what the 10th Amendment even says. I'm not sure they're running for the right job. These are issues that should be left up to the states. And the federal government should have absolutely no responsibility in deciding what the curriculum is in the states. And if we don't understand that, it's going to morph into things I've heard. You know, we're going to decertify elections. That's federalizing the elections. That's in contrary to the Constitution. The idea that we are going to Washington to bring the power as close back to the people as we can. I'm going to be strong on what the federal government needs to do, and that is defend America. And that in defense includes military, that defense includes securing our border, that defense incurs that make sure that we know how your dollars are spent so that financial security and financial opportunity is available to everyone. The idea that the federal government, if you want to change and you want to get involved in CRT, which is bad and wrong, then run for the state Senate, run for the state House, because then you're going to be knee-deep in that issue. But the United States Senate, as a federal government, should be nowhere near telling schools what they can and cannot do.
All right, thank you, Matt. Mike, go ahead.
I think a number of you here have heard me speak before, and usually when they say, what are you going to do first? Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do first. I want to get rid of the Department of Education. It needs to be shut down. Because although we can't do anything as senators, the federal government's setting the tone for the states. And I talked about it before. If we want to change social media, we do it with our feet. Well, when we want to change the schools, we do it with our votes. Every single school board in this state has some woke person on it. And you got to, and I'm guilty myself. For years, I had no idea who I was voting for school board. I picked the Irish names or maybe I knew somebody. The time has passed that we can do that. We have a duty right now to find out what these school board members believe in. They pick the superintendent. The superintendent picks. The superintendent picks the diversity consultant. And by the way, they all deny that they teach CRT, all of them. And what it is, it comes under social emotional learning. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're teaching our kids how they think. They are no longer teaching a subject. We need to teach the 3 R's. We don't need to teach how those kids should view the world. We never did that. It's part of the postmodernist influence that's coming in, and we need to stop it. But it is in our power to stop it. We can shut it down tomorrow. And, you know, I think there's school boards all over the state. You ought to be studying up on them right now, your local school board, and go out and get these people out of office. Because I know that's the only way of doing it. And when we do shut down the Department of Education, and as you know, Rand Paul endorsed me, and we talked about this the last time we were together. He's all for it.
Thank you, Mike.
So,
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Josh?
So I agree with Matt. I agree with Matt that we don't want the federal government anywhere near making education policy, and agree with Mike that we don't want a U.S. Department of Education. But where I disagree with Matt is that United States senators have a platform. They have a soapbox, and they need to lead. And the problem in Washington is you have all these squishy, rhino, coward Republicans who are afraid to take on this issue of critical race theory because they don't want to be called a racist. There's nothing racist about opposing critical race theory and loving this republic. Nothing whatsoever. Just because the liberal media, just because the Democrat Party called one of us a racist, it doesn't make it true. There's a lot of veterans in this room, and I met some of them on the way in. And you guys know, when you showed up at basic training, whether it was in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, one of the first things the drill instructors say to you, they say, listen, we don't care what color your skin is. We don't care what religion you are. We don't care how much money or little money your mommy and daddy have. You're all equally worthless to us. What they were saying is, in my case, in Parris Island, you're all Marines. 4 years, exactly 4 years after I heard that at Parris Island, I found myself in a town called Al-Qaim, which is right where the Euphrates River meets the Iraq-Syria border. It's old Babylon. We were the 1st Marine Battalion on the Syrian border. And I can guarantee you, as we were trying to stop the flow of weapons and fighters across that border, we didn't give a hoot whether the guy to the left or the right of us was a black kid from inner city Bronx, a Hispanic kid from rural Texas, or a white kid from backwoods Tennessee. Those are my brothers. We were putting our life in their hands. They were putting their life in our hands, period. That's it. Ladies and gents, that's how it should be here in the civilian world, in the classroom, in the workplace, and everywhere in society. Who cares what color skin people have? And every time the left and the media talks about it, they are stomping on the grave of Martin Luther King.
Thank you,
Content
Josh.
of character over color of skin.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Jane?
As a mom on a mission to take our country back, the indoctrination of our children needs to stop. And it's not just CRT, it's comprehensive sex education, it's social emotional learning. Look, I've been traveling around the state of Ohio, meeting with parents, doing parents first tours, because I'm on the front lines talking to parents about what's happening to their kids. I've heard stories of a little girl, 14 years old, coming home from school bawling, saying, there's nothing I can do. And her mom's saying, why? She said, because I'm a racist. I will always be a racist because of the color of our skin. We are failing our children. But most importantly, we're failing their education. We should be teaching them the fundamentals. If we want to continue to be globally competitive, we need to make sure our children in the United States get the best education possible. And I got to tell you, folks, the question is, what can you do as a U.S. Senator? I've already put out a Parents First curriculum. It talks about transparency in the schoolroom. It talks about parents being in charge of their healthcare decisions for their children. But you know, the most important thing is that a lot of money comes from the federal government right into our schools. And they use those carrots as grants to those school boards to get them to hire these teachers to teach and indoctrinate our children. That has to stop. And the other thing, how is it that the Department of Justice and the Attorney General, who I hope to have oversight, goes in cahoots with the National School Board Association to then label parents standing up for their children as domestic terrorists? As your U.S. Senator, I will put a stop to that. That ends now.
Thank you, Jane. JD?
Yeah, so hard to say what hasn't already been said, but look, one of the things that bothers me about some of the responses I've heard is people keep on saying, well, education should be a local issue. Well, of course it should. Who disagrees with that? First of all, I want to party with these ladies over here after the debate. They're having fun, right? We're talking about how to save America. We should be having a good time out here. But look, it should be a local issue, but it isn't, okay? So U.S. senators need to do more than say it should be a local issue. There are a lot of ways that we can concretely make it a local issue for our citizens, okay? And it's not just coming from the federal government. Jane is right. A lot of what's going on in our curriculum is federal money being used to fund critical race theory-based curricula. We got to stop that. We got to get it out of there. Yeah, let's abolish the Department of Education, but let's make sure there isn't a replacement department that is still funding critical race theory. But it's also a lot of corrupt, quote-unquote nonprofit organizations that get preferential tax treatment and preferential treatment to basically shove this stuff down our throats without paying a single consequence for it. You know, George Soros, ladies and gentlemen, pays a lower tax rate than any single person in this room. Okay? The people who are funding critical race theory get special tax breaks. Do you guys get special tax breaks for funding critical race theory? No, but a lot of billionaires in our country do it. Left-wing radicals who have manipulated the U.S. tax code to give their foundations and their nonprofits a way to shove this stuff down our throat. We got to finish that. And it's not enough to say this should be a local issue. It's only going to be a local issue if we have the courage and the willpower to legislate and return power to parents, which is exactly what we should be doing. If we let this toxic poison infiltrate our schools and our society, if we let this go another step further, we're going to wake up in a country where people hate each other based on the color of their skin. That's the end of the constitutional republic, ladies and gentlemen. We got to stop it, and we need, again, more than slogans. We need actual legislative solutions to return power to you and to parents all across the state.
Thank you, JD. Ladies and gentlemen and candidates, I really wanted to get to immigration, the fentanyl issues, but we're running out of time. So we're going to get to this one. JD, grab some water. You're up next. For all of you, but JD first, name one policy issue with Trump policies that you did not like about the Trump administration, and one policy issue that you liked with what Trump did.
All right, look, I loved a lot of what the president did, and of course, a lot of these guys are running negative attack ads saying that I'm an ever-Trumper, which is news to me, because actually the first time I ever got a death threat was 4 years ago, when I went on TV to defend one of the president's Supreme Court nominations. Look, I think the president, there was one thing in the tax bill that was passed in 2018, a border adjustment tax that actually Donald Trump wanted to keep in the legislation, but a lot of congressional Republicans, a lot of establishment Republicans decided to take out because it was good for Walmart and it was good for a lot of other woke corporations that are destroying this country. Trump was right. We should have kept that piece in the legislation. Still would have supported the bill, still would have voted for the bill, but we've got to send Republicans who are willing to fight back against Republican donors who don't have the best interests of this state or its people at heart. That's one thing we got to do. We got to do it more effectively. One issue where Trump just got it right, I mean, the issue, I would say, where Trump had a transformative effect on this country is he revealed the corruption in our federal government, ladies and gentlemen. Who would have believed? Not me, and a lot of you were ahead of me. Who would have believed that the Federal Bureau of Investigation would get an illegal wiretap on a sitting U.S. president? Now even the New York Times admits that this happened. Trump, there's just something about him that got the rats to reveal themselves. And one of the things that we got to do, ladies and gentlemen, is go and prosecute the people who abuse the public trust to destroy this country. If you get an illegal wiretap on a president, you got to pay consequences for it. If you collude with the teachers' unions and the teachers' organizations to suppress and attack American parents for protesting, you got to pay a consequence for it. If you're the White House press secretary telling big tech to shut down the First Amendment rights of our citizens, you got to pay for it, and it's time to do that.
Thank you, JD. Jane?
I've been in the trenches fighting for President Trump's America First policies because they work. He picked me to be the Ohio Republican Party chair because he knew I supported his policies. The best thing that Donald Trump did was stand up for America and America first. Everything from that flows down. He was talking about securing our border, energy independence, lower taxes, less regulation. Making this country great again is the principle upon which I'm going to the U.S. Senate. It is what everyone here agrees upon because it was working for our country. We had a booming economy, record low unemployment. We had peace through strength and a secure border. That's what I'm going to fight for in the United States Senate. Look, the only thing that I disagree with on President Trump is he thinks I'm short. But let me tell you, I'm 5'2" and feisty, and I'm going to take that fight as a former rugby player to the U.S. Senate. I have been in the trenches fighting for President Trump. Look, I'm the only one on this stage that can say, I got out the vote, I secured the election here in Ohio, I was on the bus tour, I was writing op-eds, I was in the trenches fighting for President Trump. And when the news media and the Democrats were attacking me because I defended him, I stayed strong. So if you want someone who's going to fight, who's 5'2" and feisty, a former rugby player who's going to stand up for all of you, that's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Josh.
One of the most important things that President Trump pushed in the White House and continues to while he's out of the White House is election integrity. There's so many squishy, rhino, establishment Republicans that say, let's just move on. Let's just look forward. Ladies and gents, we can't look forward. We can't ignore the cheating from the 2020 election, or they're going to keep doing it over and over and over again. I'm going to say something that triggers some of the liberal media. And it triggers a lot of the rhinos in the Republican Party, but every time they get triggered, I try to say it a little louder. I believe this election was stolen from Donald J. Trump. And listen, he's been talking about election integrity and cheating in elections even before he was elected president. There's only one candidate on this stage who took the time to go out to Maricopa County in Arizona, saw with the whites of my eyes, them auditing the vote. There's only one candidate on this stage who's called for an audit in Arizona, in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, but also in every state in the nation. And a lot of the rhinos, they say, well, you know, can't audit Ohio in these states where he won. Of course we can. I guarantee you he won by a higher margin than was even reported. And let me make this clear. Debates are about you knowing people's positions. I would not have voted to certify the election. Last year, in March, Mike Gibbons said he would have voted to certify the election. And 2 months ago, January of this year, he said that there was no evidence whatsoever of election cheating. These are quotes of his, public quotes in the newspaper. You can explain that to the people, sir.
All right, Mike.
I know this. 5 million more people voted than were registered to vote. There's something wrong. And you can yell the election was stolen, but we need evidence. And it's starting to come out. I don't know if you just saw the Wisconsin evidence, but apparently there are a number of nursing homes where 103% of the nursing home occupants voted, and they all voted for Joe Biden. That's the kind of evidence we need. Because if we're going to ever take this back, we need to prove that cheating actually did happen. If you go on and listen to Mike Lindell, frankly, I've listened to everything he's done, and I just shake my head when I'm done. We need hard evidence. The question originally, I think, was did I ever disagree with, or what did I disagree with and what did I agree with? I agree with America First. And by the way, I was Donald Trump's finance co-chair, State of Ohio finance co-chair in 2016. I supported him between the elections. I raised a lot of money for him. And I might add, I didn't get paid to do that. I was giving speeches to women's groups all over Ohio that I felt had to hear the truth. And the truth is, maybe you don't like how he says it, but look at what he's done. In my mind, he was the greatest president in my lifetime because of what he accomplished. If there's anything I disagree with him on, and it's only one thing, and I've said this before, it's he should not have banned bump stocks. I don't believe in any slippery slope on a Second Amendment. But that's it. Now, as far as what Josh talked about, you have to do what you have to do under the Constitution. And if I saw, what I said was, I didn't know whether I would certify because I was not there and I didn't see any evidence. If I saw evidence, I wouldn't have certified. But, you know, you can have these slogans, and that's what politicians
Mike.
do, especially ones in second place.
Thanks, Mike.
Yes.
Appreciate it, sir. All right, Matt.
All right. So we've heard a lot of talk. Since I've been in this race, I've talked about one thing: what matters to Ohio. And when President Trump was in office, Ohio was doing pretty well, wasn't it? So why don't we send somebody to Washington like me who has not just sat there and praised Donald Trump, he has executed on Donald Trump's policies right here in Ohio. Since I've been in office, your income tax has gone down 48%. We cut capital gains tax. We changed the manufacturing retention tax so that we can bring more manufacturing here to Ohio. This is about knowing who you're fighting for and what you're fighting for. And this is about you, Ohio. So I believe Donald Trump did a lot of good things, and we put those into law. His idea of reducing regulations that strangles American business was a good idea. Guess what? We put it into our budget. So for every one regulation that's introduced, 2 of them have to be thrown out. It's about execution. It's just not about praise. It's about who can get things done. And I said earlier on in my remarks, look, I don't agree that the way you're going to defeat communist China is to put tariffs on them. Communist China will just subsidize any sort of production that's being done out of their country. And all the tariffs do is put further costs on you, the consumers. And with Joe Biden, we already are paying way too much because of his inflation. So you got to recognize, as I said before, the way to defeat China is to be able to create new economic allies throughout the world to make sure Ohio returns to its hopefully Ohio, but the United States returns to its prominence about making sure that jobs stay here.
All right, thank you, Matt. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to give our candidates a quick breather, and I want to bring up, she's a part of the Grassroots effort with FreedomWorks. Please welcome Marissa Hamilton.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Can we have another round of applause for these candidates? So here at FreedomWorks, we know that freedom comes from the grassroots. It comes from all of you, from all the hard work that you do. And I know that these candidates up here sure appreciate all the work that you do for them. So now it's time for us to have you share your thoughts with us. And so if you see here on the screen, it says text Ohio to 41490. This is our straw poll. So everyone take a moment, take your phones out, and we want to find out who is your favorite candidate. So I know. So what you want to do is text the word Ohio to that number up there, 41490. And it will take you to a Google form where you can list who your favorite candidate is. Again, that's Ohio at 41490. I am so excited that you guys sound like you're deliberating very seriously here. This is great.
It's a J.D. Vance, V-A-N-C-E is how you spell it.
So how many of you in here have volunteered in the 2020 election? 2020. How many of you here have helped to register voters? I love it. How many of you here, I don't think you call them precinct committeemen, I think you call them wards here? Central committee. Okay, how many of you are on your central committees? That's awesome. It is people like you that are the ones that make sure that freedom stays in America, that freedom stays great, and that freedom works. So please give everyone a round of applause for all their activism.
Hey, these guys are up here voting for themselves with their phones.
Every vote counts, Jane.
So I want to thank you all for participating in this straw poll. It's important. It's important for the candidates to hear your honest opinions of how you feel. And so basically today, you are voting today, and tomorrow with FreedomWorks, we will send you a message as to how you can get more involved, how we can make sure that we keep America great, and that we make sure that Freedom works here in Ohio. So stay tuned. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marissa. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if we could quiet down. This is our final moments here with our candidates. Candidates, I'm going to toss it down the line here. Matt, we'll start with you. We'll go down the line. You're going to have to be a little disciplined. You only get 30 seconds for this one. And following up after this, we'll come back, reverse from JD down, and give our closing remarks. Okay, and you'll get 2 minutes for that. For the 30-second question, this has been a huge crisis. From year to year, I think 2020 to 2021, we've saw over 100,000 overdoses, fentanyl overdoses. How would you, in 30 seconds, Matt, we'll start with you, take care of the opioid and human trafficking crisis?
So I would rely on my experience. I've been a prosecutor. I've actually put drug dealers into jail. I've tried those cases. I've worked with the police in my career. I have worked with my police as a representative. I've worked with the police in this campaign. That's why the National Sheriff's Association are supporting me, the president of it. But the reality is what I've said all along, that we should have secured the border in 2017 when President Trump came into office, and we didn't get it done. In order to regain, we've got to secure the border.
Thank you, Matt. Mike?
It's pretty simple. Finish the wall, secure the border, and follow the laws. Because the laws are in place, and Joe Biden's ignoring them. And we do those things, and everything's fine. We did have a president prior to Joe Biden that actually did that, and you saw how it worked. But I can tell you this: I don't believe that anybody that comes to this country illegally should ever have a path to being a citizen of this country. And if we say that, and we have a president that says that...
Appreciate it, Mike. Thank you.
It won't be
Sorry, I hate cutting you off. Sorry. All right, go ahead, Josh.
So much of the flow of fentanyl that's killing people's sons and daughters right here in central Ohio and throughout the state comes across the border, but it comes from China. And so the most important thing we could do to stop the flow of fentanyl that's killing our kids and grandkids is to secure the southern border. The media wants you to think that it's only Mexicans, but the reality is it's not just Mexicans. It's Guatemalans, Hondurans, Haitians, Yemenis, and a ton of Chinese nationals and Chinese fentanyl. And the most important thing we could do is stop the invasion at the southern border.
Thanks, Josh. Go ahead, Jane.
We need to build the wall. We need to secure the southern border. The flow of illegal drugs that are coming across the border are harming our citizens right here in Ohio. I spend time talking with the police. They're on the front lines. We need to get back to the days where we treat criminals and the drug cartels like the criminals they are, and the police officers like the heroes they are. I've served on a drug and alcohol addiction board. I've been on the front lines of this issue. We need to get that wall built and help the people who are addicted.
Thank you, Jane. JD.
Yeah, so real quick, I know this problem very personally. I know a number of my family members have been affected by addiction. And look, it's really simple. First of all, our healthcare system's a total disaster. When people are ready to take that first step to get into treatment, there got to be options available to them. You got to fix American healthcare in this country. Number two, look, it's simple. Declare the Mexican cartels a drug terrorist organization, okay? Because that's exactly what they are. They're a narco-terrorist organization. And number two, stop giving welfare to illegal aliens, because that encourages people to come across the southern border in the first place. That makes it easier for them to bring the drugs that are killing so many of our fellow citizens.
All right, JD. Brett, if you need some water. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to do our closing remarks. JD, we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, so my background is that I grew up in a working class family. I was raised by my mama and papa because my mom struggled with opioid addiction for a big chunk of her early childhood, her early life, my early childhood. And what really happened in my community is a bunch of very stupid policies where we shipped good American jobs overseas. People like my grandparents lost the lifeblood of our communities, and eventually we became poorer. Our communities became less safe. And if you dare complain about it, ladies and gentlemen, if you dare say it's unacceptable what's going on in this country, they'll call you a racist or a xenophobe or an idiot or whatever name they choose to call you. At the end of the day, what Joe Biden is doing to this country, I see through the lens and the perspective of my mamaw, because she was taking care of a grandkid she didn't expect to take care of. Now think about all the children killed, all the children orphaned because Joe Biden can't get control of this fentanyl and drug problem on our southern border, and think all the grandparents that are taking care of grandbabies they didn't expect to take care of. Now they can't even put food on the table because Joe Biden's inflation policies are hammering them at the pocketbook. We need Republicans who know what that feels like. We need Republicans who come from the communities that are actually sending Republicans to Washington in the first place, and we need people who are not going to forget where they came from. We need them to fight for our voters, and that's me. That's why I'm doing this, ladies and gentlemen. Look at what the media says about me. Look at what the people who hate all of us in this room, they're obsessed with me. Why are they obsessed with me? Because they know I'm a threat to them, they know I'm not going to back down, and they know if I get to Washington, I'm going to serve the people in this room, not the special interests who control the Republican Party or the weak, cowardly, evil Democrats who control Washington right now. It's time to fight back, ladies and gentlemen. Please join us, jdvance.com. I need all the help I can get. God bless you.
Thank you, JD. Shane Timken.
Thank you, FreedomWorks, for hosting this event. I appreciate it. And thank you to all of you in the audience. You are on the front lines of taking our country back, and I thank you. You know, this race, for me, is about the American dream. I am the granddaughter and daughter of immigrants. My grandparents came to this country from Ireland with little or no education. My grandfather worked in a rubber factory. My grandmother was a maid. My mother came here to this country for her own American dream from Scotland. And I got to tell you, as a mom, not a birthing person, I'm going to fight for your children and your grandchildren's American dream. But if we're honest, that dream's at risk because of the Democrats and their agenda, their socialist agenda. Look, I've been in the front lines of fighting for the America First policies. Over the last 5 years, I put over 150,000 miles in my car, traveling Ohio, talking to Ohio's families, farmers, businesses, and our communities. And I have been fighting for them, and I will fight for you. For those America First policies that were working for us. When we had a booming economy, we had American jobs, we had energy independence. That's who I'm fighting for. And I will never give up because it's all about you. At the end of the day, you have a choice. Who's been in the trenches fighting for you? Who's been all around Ohio who understands you and your family? Who's going to make sure that the Democrat policies get stopped? It's me. I will be in the trenches fighting for you. I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking for your help. Most importantly, God bless all of you, and thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Josh Mandel.
Elections are about choices. And the reason why I'm grateful for FreedomWorks putting this on tonight, we've done eight debates already. We've got one in Cleveland next week and a bunch of others, is to present the differences between candidates on positions. And I just want to summarize some of my positions and some of the differences. The Chinese Communist Party will have no worse enemy than me in the United States Senate. I will wake up every morning living and breathing and sleeping to combat the Chinese Communist Party and keep them from stealing our jobs. My opponent, Mr. Gibbons, shipped thousands of jobs from a company called Perfect Fit LLC to a company called Shanghai Shenda. This was in 2015 while President Trump was running for president. Second, I would not have voted to certify the election.
Shh, ladies and gentlemen.
I would
please.
not have voted to certify the election. As you just heard from his own mouth, he would have. Third, I am devoutly pro-life without exception. When Mr. Gibbons was asked his position on abortion, he said, quote, this is in 2017, that women should have a right to choose. Ladies and gents, that is the position of pro-choice. That is the position of the other party. That is a quote from him. I am pro-life without exception. I stood up and fought for the heartbeat bill when these squishy rhino Republicans were afraid to. And I believe in the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House, we need fighters for life, not people like Mr. Gibbons who are pro-choice.
All right. Thank you, Josh. Mike Gibbons.
Now, I get 30.
No, Mike, just 2 minutes. I apologize. Go ahead.
All right, well, let me handle pro-choice first of all. I am pro-choice pro-life 100%. That's smart. I've been pro-life my whole life. My mother was adopted. I found out she was adopted when I was 12 years old. I was pro-life before they called it pro-life. He knows I'm pro-life. I was president of the Magnificat Fathers Club. I drove my daughters and their friends to Right to Life organizational things on a regular basis. I was the one that always took the position that you couldn't be a Catholic and be pro-choice. And in fact, since this guy's been going out and saying this, I've had the people I used to argue with that are pro-choice calling me and saying, hey, Mike, we know you're pro-life. Everybody knows I'm pro-life. Now, I will tell you, I'm a businessman, I'm not a politician. And I tell it like it is. And I've been consistent. And I will tell you, when I get to Washington, I won't owe anybody any favors. I can't be bought. I've already achieved my American dream. But I want to tell you what I believe in. I believe in America and the America First agenda. I believe in the sanctity of human life and the right to keep and bear arms. I believe a nation without borders is no nation at all. I back the blue, and I believe in law and order. I believe in liberty, personal responsibility, and that America is still the land of hope. I believe in peace through strength. I believe America is the greatest country in the history of the world. And I believe, most importantly, that our rights come from Almighty God and not from government. Amen. So, join my campaign, look at our resumes, see who's the most qualified, and vote.
Hey, Mike, I apologize. I want to give you 30 more seconds because you had to address what happened with Josh. So if you need 30 more seconds.
I don't need that much, but
okay, sure.
I'll finish this up. Look at who's most qualified. I believe you'll choose me. You have a lot of choices here. There's a whole football team running. And it's going to be up to you. I believe I'm the most qualified. I believe I have the right background. And I'm not a career politician. So I'd love to get your support. I'd love to get your vote. And thank you for having me here tonight.
Thank you, Mike. Matt Dolan.
Thank you, Brandon. Great job. Thank you, FreedomWorks, and thank you all for coming. Look, I'm humbled to stand before you because I am a product of the American dream and the American sacrifice. My grandfather was a World War I hero. My uncle fought in World War II. My other uncle fought in the Vietnam War. My dad, first one to go to college, got a football scholarship, figured out how to do college and law school in 5.5 years, and then joined the Marines. And if he were here, he would tell you proudly that in his time in the Marines, nobody invaded Jacksonville, Florida. So while that was going on, my mom has an interesting story. She spent 18 months in a Maryknoll Catholic convent. And so, fortunately for me and my 5 brothers and sisters, she did not take her vows. And as fate would have it, they met. And when they left Jacksonville, they went to Chardon, Ohio to start a 2-person law firm. And you guys might know all the results of the work, but the story of what they did, raising 6 kids and building a very successful life for all of us. I'm 57 years old. I stand before you And all my successes and all my failures are my own. Because I was raised with the idea of faith, hard work, and service. That's what was expected of us. My wife Jessica is joining us tonight. We have 2 boys. We want them to understand faith, hard work, and service so that they learn from our example what all of you guys know. America is indeed an exceptional nation. But if we don't work at it every single day and go to Washington and execute on the many ideas we talked about tonight to make sure that we are going to show that America, this nation that was formed of ideas, is once again the strongest nation and the best force of good in all of the world. Thank you. Dolan4Ohio.com.
Thank you, Matt. Ladies and gentlemen, as we wrap up, there's a high probability, an excellent chance that one of these candidates will be your next U.S. Senator from Ohio. This Senate race is the most expensive race in U.S. Senate history. And it's incredible, very competitive. You have highly qualified people right here from all different walks of life. I don't know how you guys do it, but we're grateful that you took the time to be here tonight. Could we give it up for all of our candidates tonight? Matt Dolan, Mike Gibbons, Josh Mandel, Jane Timken, and J.D. Vance. Thank you all for coming, and God bless America.